Welcome to this explainer. Look, I want you to imagine a really specific scenario with me for a second. Picture thousands of Indian mid-sized companies all breathing this massive collective sigh of relief at the exact same time. Why? Well, the Securities and Exchange Board of India, SEBI, just made this major announcement. They decided to ease up on environmental reporting rules, specifically around this massive headache known as Scope 3 emissions.
For domestic businesses, this announcement honestly felt like a giant anvil had just been lifted right off their chests. I mean, think about it. No more mandatory value chain tracking. No more drowning in an absolute ocean of compliance paperwork just to keep the factory lights on. The daily, grinding struggle of trying to gather really granular sustainability metrics from every single tiny supplier, it seemed to just vanish overnight. It finally gave businesses that crucial breathing room they desperately, desperately wanted. But here is the catch. And this is exactly where our story takes a pretty sharp turn. What if that massive sigh of relief was completely premature? Actually, what if this whole regulatory easing is, well, a trap? The core conflict we're looking at is this. Domestic regulators have backed off for now. Yes, that's true. But your biggest international customers, they are actively tightening their grip.
It's honestly a classic tale of two completely different realities. On one side, you've got this domestic shield provided by SEBI's new voluntary approach, which, let's be honest, feels incredibly safe and comfortable. But on the other side, you've got the harsh global reality. Because the absolute truth of the matter is, if you take SEBI's cue and decide to just stop tracking your emissions today, it might literally cost you your biggest export contracts tomorrow.
Okay, to really understand this trap, we need to quickly understand the trigger, which is Scope 3 emissions. Simply put, these are all the indirect emissions that are embedded in a company's entire value chain. So we're not just talking about the smoke coming out of your own factory chimney. It includes your upstream suppliers who provide the raw materials, all the way to your downstream users. It's essentially the total, comprehensive carbon footprint of doing business with you from start to finish. And the proof of this domestic relief is right there in the official documentation. In a March 2025 circular, SEBI officially hit the pause button on the mandatory tracking of these Scope 3 emissions. Now, you might be wondering, why the sudden backtrack? Well, the reality on the ground was pretty stark. Small Indian vendors simply weren't ready. They completely lacked the technology, the capital, and honestly, the basic data infrastructure to handle such an unprecedented and massive reporting burden. To put it in perspective, under the old BRSR mandate, value chain reporting was going to be completely mandatory and strictly audited. Honestly, it was an intimidating prospect for almost everyone involved. But under this newly revised rule, SEBI shifted everything entirely to a voluntary model for the top 250 listed entities, at least until the financial year 2026 to 2027. Even providing previous year baseline data, that's optional now too. It's a huge domestic breather. It basically allows companies to focus purely on their core operations without sweating over immediate regulatory penalties.
But here is the bold warning that absolutely every exporting business needs to hear right now. Voluntary in India does not equal optional globally. Let me repeat that because it's crucial. Global buyers do not answer to SEBI. If you're an Indian manufacturer supplying to global tech, auto, or retail giants, playing exclusively by local Indian rules is absolutely not going to save you in the international market. The global supply chain has a totally different playbook. Because while SEBI is taking its foot off the gas, the rest of the world is doubling down. Foreign buyers are bound by some extremely stringent international laws. Two of the absolute heavy hitters are the European Union's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, usually called the CSRD, and the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or CBAM. And listen, these aren't just polite voluntary guidelines. No way. They are strict legal mandates with very severe economic consequences attached. So why does that actually matter to your bottom line? Well, under the updated CSRD rules, foreign buyers with over 450 million euros in turnover are legally required to report their value chain emissions. Let that sink in. That means they legally must demand granular carbon data from you, their Indian supplier. If they can't get that data from you, they face massive regulatory penalties back home. They literally cannot afford to do business with a blind spot in their supply chain. It's too risky for them. Let's play out a very real hypothetical scenario for a second. Imagine a major German buyer asks an Indian auto component supplier for their carbon footprint data. The Indian SME replies, "Actually, SEBI made this voluntary for us here, so we aren't really tracking it." What do you think happens next? The German buyer doesn't argue.
They don't wait around. They just pivot and immediately award that highly lucrative contract to a competitor in Vietnam or Taiwan who has all their emissions data ready to go. Boom, contract lost. That right there, that's the trap. But hey, don't panic, because there's absolutely a way out of this that doesn't involve drowning in paperwork or spending millions of rupees on fancy consulting fees. We are going to go through a practical, totally low-cost survival guide for Indian businesses. This will help you stay globally competitive and actually turn this massive compliance threat into a tangible business advantage. We've distilled this survival guide down to a super clear 3-step action plan. Step 1, focus strictly on the big 3 metrics. Step 2, leverage free tools and government subsidies. And Step 3, completely flip the script and turn this data into a really powerful sales pitch. Let's dive into exactly how to do this. All right, Step 1. The single biggest mistake businesses make right out of the gate is trying to track absolutely everything. Please, don't do that. To satisfy global buyers initially, you really only need to focus on the big 3 baseline indicators. Just track your direct fuel and diesel usage. That's your Scope 1. Track your purchased electricity. That's your Scope 2. And finally, track your basic waste management. Honestly, if you nail these 3, you are already 80% of the way there. Moving to Step 2, let's talk about funding this transition, because I know that's on your mind. Consider the impact of just 5%. Under the government's ADETE scheme, micro and small enterprises can actually secure a 5% interest subvention on loans specifically to deploy energy-efficient technologies. Upgrading to green tech isn't just a feel-good move for the planet anymore. It is heavily subsidized, potentially driving your net borrowing interest rate down to as low as 2%. That turns what looks like an operational expense into a pretty brilliant financial move. Furthermore, please do not go out and drop cash on expensive enterprise-level ESG software if you're an SME. You don't need it. Completely free carbon calculators are available right now from platforms like the SME Climate Hub, and they are designed specifically for small businesses in India. Combine that with Niti Aayog's Nisha roadmap and BEE schemes that offer fully reimbursable energy audits up to 1 lakh rupees, and the truth becomes crystal clear. The tools to measure and improve are already out there, and they are free. All right, Step 3. This is where you go on the offensive. Turn your data into a sales pitch. It is time to stop treating ESG data as just some annoying compliance chore. Imagine attaching a clean, professional, 1-page carbon readiness report to your very next global request for proposal. When a European buyer compares you against domestic competitors who are just hiding behind SEBI's voluntary rule, your proactive data set sets you miles and miles ahead. It proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that you are a mature, globally ready partner. So, if there is one core takeaway from all of this, it's this. SEBI gave Indian supply chains a shield. They protected you from local penalties and massive domestic administrative burnout. But remember, a shield only plays defense. It is entirely up to your business to take the initiative and build the sword you need to actually compete and win on the global stage. I want to leave you with a question to chew on. Are your international clients already starting to ask for your carbon footprints? Have you seen this happening yet? Let me know in the comments below. And hey, if you're sitting there wondering where to even begin, just drop a comment and I will personally share a basic tracking template you can use to start gathering your big 3 metrics today. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Hit that subscribe button for more insights, and I'll catch you in the next one.